Now I'm working on stabs, and I want to make sure that all my stabs are penetrating and basically making damage as a stabbing motion, not as a slash. So again, I got all those 9 points straight in the center, this corner, this corner, this corner, this corner, this corner, straight from underneath this corner. And every time I stab, my hand remains here. I keep everything the same. My footwork stays the same, and only my weapon, or only what I'm working at right now, is moving. Everything else remains the same. Following the pyramid concept, the slash and the stabs, you can start building combination. The first combinations we're going to start working on is slash and stab. Basically what I'm going to do is, whatever line I traveled on the slash, I'm going to reverse and stab. In other words, if I took the diagonal down, I slash and stab. If I take diagonal on this side, slash and stab. I basically reverse it into a stab. Slash, stab, slash, stab, slash, stab, slash, stab, slash, stab, slash, stab. Every motion is reversed. That will build you a combination. In other words, you not only slashed him, you just came back with a stab, so you're going to shock him. A lot of time in a knife fight, when people get slashed, they don't feel it. In other words, the adrenaline is kicking in, and the slash is not felt right away, in the sense of, because there's so much stress, there's so much adrenaline pumping in, they didn't realize they got slashed. Now you did the damage, but you did not shock them, in the sense of they didn't feel it. And it's the stab who's going to come back with that shock, which will be the short-circuiting him as far as being effective. On the same token, you can have stab and slash. Now stab and slash is a little bit different. I'm taking a stab. I'm going to have to rotate the blade to come with the slash. In other words, if I took that stab, I don't want to disconnect, come out of this flash, and then slash him again. That will be considered two attacks. It will be the stab, come back, slash. I want to create damage by stabbing him, keeping the point of my knife into his flesh, hooking it, and slashing. So his wound will be a hole, a hook, and a deep slash. Again, stab, hook, and slash. Stab, hook, and slash. Anytime I stab, I hook, turn the blade, and slash. Stab, hook, and slash. Stab, hook, and slash. Again, I'm following all those points that I have. Now, if you are looking at on a mathematical view of it, you have 8 slashes to begin with. You have 9 stabs. You have 9 stabs. You have 8 slash and stab combinations. And you have 9 stab and slash combination. 8 multiply 9 multiply 8 multiply 9. This is how much possibilities you have in your attacking modes. Okay, if you multiply those numbers and you attack somebody following this pyramid, there is not one human being on earth who's going to be able to cope with that pressure of stress coming in with all these attacks. So when you attack using that pyramid motion, you're coming in with those combinations, one after the other, overlapping. He doesn't know where it's coming from, he doesn't know what's next, and you keep attacking, keep attacking. That's going to overwhelm him, short-circuit him, and damage him to the point of that you basically eliminate him or terminate him. Okay, you're going to have to learn to free flow. In other words, you use all those techniques in a free flow. Again, right now we're doing big motion because I'm illustrating muscle memory. Stab and slash, 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 stab, stab, slash. You have to go as fast and as slow as you can record what you're doing. I don't want you to end up doing this and flailing your knife and you don't know what you're doing. The difference between us and the animals is that we control our action. I don't want to do an action that controls me. In other words, you have to do the drill and the training recording what you're doing. So you basically saying to yourself, slash, slash, stab, stab, slash, slash and stab. Then you know exactly what you're doing. Therefore, you're in control of the motion. Now we're going to go into a free flow drill. I want you to be able to get better at what you do following this drill. In the beginning of the drill, you're going to see me doing wide motion following that pyramid. I'm going to do it slow first for muscle memory. Then I'm going to take the same wide motions and speed it up. Then I'm going to pause and tighten up the pyramid. Make slow motion medium, medium speed, medium motion. Then I'm going to tighten up faster. And finally, I'm going to go into what we call target motion, which will be the actual way I'm going to attack with the blade. All right? Here comes the drill. Okay, following the pyramid concept, you're going to attack your targets. Okay, in fighting stance. Okay, your primary target in a knife fight is his hand holding his knife. You have no business coming over here and starting to go to work without clearing his front knife. In other words, I am going to use the pyramid that I've used before, but that pyramid is going to become a real 3 by 3 inches. And that's how I'm going to attack that hand. So if I took a slash, I'm going to take a slash right here. If I took a stab, I'm going to just poke him in the hand, try to make him lose the knife, or maybe retreat and then I can trap. Or I can work in combination, slash and stab. Okay, and then what we'll do is you start adjusting the targets as you engage. All right, so your first target is the hand. It does not take a lot for a knife to nip the tendon or the finger for him to lose the knife. The only people who will keep the knife after you nip them or either stab them in the tendons here are people that are under the influence or either alcohol or drug that they can't feel it. That's the only people who will keep it. Now, if they ended up keeping the knife, the tendon and nervous system will end up retracting the motion even if they don't want to do so. And then you'll have a trap to begin with, so it's not really irrelevant. In other words, your first target is that hand holding the knife. Secondary target will be the mobility. Mobility is the tendon right here or the tendon on the inside. In other words, I'm going to try to use that pyramid into a slash right here. If I cut him on the tendon here and he tries to move towards me, he's going to collapse this way. In other words, I took his mobility out. If I collect his tendon on the inside with across the pyramid this way, he's going to collapse this way. In other words, I took his mobility out of that. After that, I get a freebie on killing him, basically. And only then your third target will be his throat. And the same thing happens here. I put like a little pyramid as a target. If I'm stabbing, I'm coming stab here. If I'm slashing, I'm slashing here. If I'm stabbing and slashing, it'll be one coming in, hooking, and slashing down. So my pyramids are starting to be on his body. Primary target, the hand. Secondary target, the mobility. Third target, the neck. Those are primary target. Then you have what I call secondary target. In other words, targets that are there for management of the fight, not as objectives. There will be his forearms, cutting his forearms. I cut his forearms, I'm not going to terminate him or incapacitate him. It's just going to help me with the management of the fight. Cutting his legs, not the tendons, his legs. Cutting his abdominals, cutting his shoulder. Those are secondary target that if you ended up taking it in the process as a transition, that's okay too. Carlos is getting his fighting stance and I am in my fighting stance. I have to combine my footwork with my pyramid to engage. If I don't do that, or if I violate that order or that combination of the two, I'm going to be the underdog as I engage. For an example, if I step in and only then slashing, while I step in, Carlos can start attacking. If I reach to do my pyramid and I'm out of reach on the negative, if he steps in with his footwork, then he's going to end up attacking me. So in other words, I'm going to have to apply my footwork and the pyramid on engagement. That's called proper engagement. All right, as I said before, primarily target is going to be the hand. Therefore, I am going to enter with a slash and stab, but I'm going to push off my footwork going forward at the same time. So basically what will happen is slash and stab. Okay, that will be my engagement. Again, slash and stab. Now, according to what you like, some people like to come diagonal and stab. Some people like to come horizontal across. You can go there and stab here. It doesn't really matter. The slash will take care of nibbling him in the tendons of fingers, either disarming him or either retracting, and then you'll get a freebie on the stab. It is important that you understand negative in relationship to the engagement. If you stepped in and then you do, then you're going to have that negative that's a half beat that Carlos can attack. If I combine my footwork with the slash, what will happen is a slash works this way. If you look at the knife now, it works this way. Half of it is positive, then automatically there's the negative. If I apply my footwork at the same time, what will happen is the knife will travel this way. In other words, my footwork is going to steal that negative. Okay, it's an optical illusion, but the knife never, even though my action retracted, because I'm pushing off with my footwork, knife always traveled forward. That's called stealing the negative. And that's called having a proper engagement. So every time I engage, it's footwork, slash, and stab. Any of those combinations, slash and stab. I don't want to see my Ghana students going straight for a stab, ignoring that hand. I don't want to see my Ghana students only fishing for a slash, because if he retracted his hand and now he comes in, you did not occupy the line in the half beat. It's important you understand. Every technique I throw, if it's a slash or if it's a stab, that's considered a full beat. Things in between are called half beat. The half beat I establish by supercharging your footwork in combination of your techniques, and that will give you the edge in the knife fight. People that are uneducated about knife fighting look at it and say, wow, they're quick. They're not quick. They are inserting half beats in between. We're both in a fighting stance, okay? I'm deciding tactically to cut the angle to engage with, okay? This is a tactic that's a little bit more advanced than a regular engagement. Instead of me coming straight on with a slash and stab, I'm going to decide to cut the angle, okay? Cutting the angle means angling up and rotating my opponent, and there is a tactical reason why I'll do so. If I'm here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come right here, okay? Maybe he came in with a straight stab and I angled up to avoid that, or maybe I initiated the angling up to begin with, okay? As soon as I'm here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to imagine that somebody's got a cable to my ankle and it's being yanked this way, and automatically I cut the angle. Watch again. In other words, if Carlos came in for a stab and I'm here, I rotate and cut the angle. What this does now, anything Carlos is going to do, he's going to have to turn his guns first. And that puts me in a half beat ahead of him footwork wise. In other words, I get a half beat for free. All right, so again, I'm here, one here, rotate here. By turn, I can already attack. And